I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with Charles Binns. He is a masterful storyteller who takes a deep dive into the intricate tapestry of human emotions, experiences, and expectations in his remarkable book called Quirky Stories and Poems, Backwards, Forwards, and Upside Down. With tales that span the realms of childhood to futuristic predictions, the author captures the essence of our shared human journey in bite-sized narratives that beckon readers from all walks of life to take a look, take a listen, have a smile, and perhaps understand life a little bit better. We're delighted to have this talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing this wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Charles, thanks so much for joining us here on Spotlight today.
Thank you, Logan. It's great to be here.
Let's start out with backwards, okay? How did your own experiences growing up influence the stories and poems in this section of the book?
Well, you don't have to think too far back in your childhood to find some sweet or funny moments. So I tried to include some of both. Some of them came through poetry, others through stories. I had two brothers. One of my younger brothers was on the bottom bunk with me. So I wrote a poem called Bunk Bed Brothers that kind of captures the wonder years there. And I have there's an illustration that goes along with it. I don't know if you have those illustrations, but I did about 25 or so for the book.
Wonderful. You know, when I had two boys, one of the first things I bought them was bunk beds, because I don't think there's a greater bonding experience in the world than sharing a bunk with your brother or a best friend or whomever it is, to have those late night talks while he's above you or below you. It's really quite wonderful.
That's true. Well, I had the top bunk since I was the older of the two, but the advantage of the bottom bunk is that you can kick your older brother. So a good
Exactly.
bit of that went on. We also lived in Florida at the time, so we would sit back to back in August and watch the meteor showers, where we could count about 100 in an hour between us.
Amazing. That sounds really wonderful. It sounds like a storied childhood, and it definitely is, because it's a story within this book. Let's talk about forward. A blend of sci-fi and humor in this section is what we'll find. What are the messages you're hoping to convey about our potential futures?
Well, that we are not exactly sure how it's all going to go, and we have to be cognizant of how we behave. Um, at the moment, I'm not too sure, but I try to turn it in mostly in a humorous way. I wrote a story called "We Adopted." It's one of my robot stories that's about the new near future. If I could, I'd like to just share a few sentences that how this thing starts out.
I'd love that. Go ahead, please.
We hadn't planned on having any more children. Marge and I were both in our early 50s, and our children were adults. In fact, we didn't intend to adopt either. However, our new baby came in a box from Best Buy in 2016. So it goes on from there.
I
And
love it.
if you have a Google Home or whatever, you know how they can kind of become part of the family, and they don't always do exactly what you think. So this story progresses into the robot's adolescence, and it might be a springboard for another story.
That's great. You know, it also sounds like a springboard for a stand-up comedy routine or a one-man show or something like that. I could really see you bringing some of these stories to life in like a stage format or even a film. But I really see it lending itself to the stage, where you would like tell these stories in different aspects of your life with simple scene changes. I think it'd be wonderful.
That sounds like it could be fun. I'm not sure that I could do that. I did actually attempt stand up once and failed miserably. However, I'm much better on the page.
Right, right. Well, you're great on the page, and failing at stand up once is a good thing, you know, because you learn some hard knocks in life and pick yourself up and keep on going. Stand up is one of the toughest things you could possibly try to do. So
I would.
you're in a very rich club there of a lot of people who tried and don't feel like they did that great.
I didn't try for very long.
Exactly, exactly. Let's talk about upside down now. The characters in this section of the book are complex. They have blurred lines between good and evil. What do you hope to tell people about human nature and its ambiguity in this section?
Well, I sum it up in some free verse at the beginning of this section that sort of summarizes what it's about. So if you'd like to hear that.
Oh, absolutely.
The horizon, a precipice for ships, seems so far away, but then we descend a winding staircase we were supposed to ascend, and we find ourselves with vertigo, looking up when we should be looking out from a lighthouse to signal a warning.
Wonderful, wonderful. I like how everything is it can be humorous, it can be profound. I mean, there's a lot of different emotions and themes in your book.
Yeah, one of the themes that I touch on a lot has to do with time, which was a subject of a master's thesis that I did in marketing, kind of along the lines of the Zen of persuasion. Timing is a factor in all kinds of things, certainly if you're selling something or asking your boss for a raise. But it also shows up in a number of my stories. For example, there's one in this section that is only 75 words long, and I won't read you the story, but I'll tell you it's called Daniel the Statue. And it's
Mhm.
about a guy in a hospital gown who perceives time at a vastly different speed.
Mhm.
It's a real thing called tachypsychia, and it enables Daniel to perform what may be a life saving function for the hospital. Those around him are unaware.
Yeah.
That's the story. So it's short, it's quick, it's in and out, and it kind of makes you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And time certainly is relative. And depending on where you are, it passes quickly or it passes slowly. That's for sure. Um, were these works that you compiled over the years and put them into a book, or is this something you specifically wrote for this book?
Well, that's a good question. It's a little bit of both. One of the stories that I wrote called The Boy Who Loved Grape Jam, I actually wrote for my high school literary magazine.
Hmm.
There's another story in there called The Diamond Affair, which I wrote in college, not for a literature class, but for the only science class I took that was called Physics, Fact or Fiction. So those were from way back. I wrote some about 15 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, when it seemed like the world was going a little upside down there during that financial crisis in 2008, 9, and so on. And many of them I've written more recently. I'm part of a writing group here in Leland, and we have about 8 people that are in the group. We often write from prompts. So we were in the habit, or we've been in the habit of writing stories in about 20 minutes. We don't always write, a masterpiece, but sometimes I found I could write and finish a story in that amount of time. Sometimes I go back later and polish it. Some require more polishing than others. Some I would extend.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a great exercise. I mean, I think writing something in 20 minutes forces you just to write and not to think, because the thinking is always there. So I tell that to writers all the time, just like, don't think, just write, pour everything out onto the paper. And then you can go back and rewrite 100 times if you want, but just get the thoughts down. And as a journalist, that's what you're forced to do all the time, is just bang it out, as we like to say, and put it down. So that's a great exercise. These poems, these stories, these tales that you have within this book are wonderful. The title of the book is Quirky Stories and Poems, Backwards, Forwards, and Upside Down. They will really put a smile on your face. They will make you think back to different times. They will make you think ahead to future times. And they will make you, maybe have you look at things from an upside down perspective here and there as well. Charles, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much, Logan. Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time. Until next time on Spotlight.